Food from Outside by Rita Williams Garcia. My sister, brother, and I didn't have a dog, but we sure could have used one around dinner time. Our dog would never have had to beg for table scraps, for we promised sincerely in our mealtime prayers always to feed Rover the main course. It wouldn't have been so much for love of dog, but for survival. You see, our mother, known throughout the neighborhood as Miss Essie, was still refining her cooking skills. Until we could persuade our parents to let us have a dog, we sat at the dinner table with wax sandwich bags hidden in our pockets, especially when Miss Essie served hackensack, our code word for mystery stew. "Rosalind, Russell, and Rita, don't get up from that table till you eat every bit of that food," Miss Essie commanded. Then she'd stand there and not leave until we began eating. Since we knew we'd be at the table for a long time, we came up with experiments to amuse ourselves while our parents watched television in the other room. Our favorite food test, the pork chop drop, was devised by my 11-year-old brother Russell, our resident scientist. "Tonight we'll continue our study on speed and density," Russell said, holding up his pork chop. I'll count," I volunteered, lowering my face to plate level. Rosalind, the oldest at 12, turned toward the living room to confirm that the coast was clear and then gave the go-ahead for the pork chop drop. The object of the pork chop drop was to compare the hardness of that night's pork chops to those of dinners past. Usually Russell would hold the chop about 2 feet above the plate and let it drop, while Rosalind and I counted the side-to-side reverberations of the pork chop as it hit the dinner table. The thinner and harder the pork chop, the higher the drop count. All we knew about food was what Mommy cooked, and the cold sandwiches and stewed spinach they served in the school cafeteria. Living in Seaside, California, we were separated by thousands of miles from our grandmothers, aunts, and cooking cousins who lived in New York, Virginia, and North Carolina. Eating in restaurants and fast food places were frivolities we knew nothing of. Above all, we adhered to Miss Essie's firm rule, which was never to eat dinner at anyone else's house. She never gave a reason for her rule, other than the promise of a spanking, and we never thought to question her. As soon as our friends' fathers drove up to their driveways from work, we were to go straight home. Up until 1966, when we were 12, 11, and 10, Rosalind, Russell, and I believed that oil-soaked pork chops flattened to blackened sand dollars and cemented rice that defied separation was how food looked and tasted. It was when Daddy replaced our black and white model with the color TV that we got an inkling about the texture and appearance of food from the outside, taste being the only missing component. We'd sit in the dark before the glowing screen, oohing and eyeing over a parade of McDonald's and Crisco oil commercials, not to mention those sitcom dining room scenes where platters of succulent meats and brightly hued vegetables graced the table. "Mommy, how come our French fries don't look like that?" I'd exclaim, for ours were oily olive, dark brown, or black, certainly not golden brown and crinkled like the fries in the commercials. "Well, that's how white people cook," Mommy would reply, seemingly unaffected, or "That's not real, that's TV." And those answers worked initially, but being inquisitive children, we began to ask our friends what they ate and how it tasted. We dared not to ask them to smuggle out samples of their mother's cooking. At least I didn't, believing Miss Essie was omniscient. One thing was for certain. Daddy and Mommy didn't eat what we ate. They ate first and separately at some secret parent banquet where they drank Pepsi and laughed, and children were not allowed within earshot. To compound the mystery, Miss Essie did not permit us inside the kitchen while she was cooking their supper. We were to stay outside till she called us in for her own. This only caused more speculation about what our parents ate and why we could not have any, and naturally we came up with a plan to investigate. The plan called for us to end our kickball game promptly at 4:30 in the afternoon, and that was when Billie Holiday and Miss Essie sang "Ain't Nobody's Business" while Hot Pop and Grease applauded in the kitchen. "It's the only way," Rosalind insisted. "Me or Russell will do it. Pick one." "Why my arm?" I wailed, limply offering it to her. "Why can't we use your arm?" "'Cause you're the baby, and Mommy will do anything for her Rita cakes." I stuck out my tongue, rankled by a nickname that I had outgrown. Rosalind yanked my forearm and sucked hard till a red flower appeared on my skin. We stood back to admire it. Although it didn't swell as we'd hoped, the red blotch was convincing. Phase 2 of the plan then went into effect. As Agent X brought sobbing Agent Y in through the front door, Agent Z stationed himself at the back door gateway to the kitchen, and just as Rosalind had predicted, Miss Essie dropped her potholder to attend to me. "See, Mommy, a bee stung me." Mommy, somewhat skeptical, inspected the fading wound and took me to the bathroom for some first aid. This was all we needed to get our investigation of the grown-ups' food, or what Russell called the fact-finding expedition, underway. We conferred at the dinner table that evening. Rosalind and I listened intently as Russell described the meats, vegetables, and starches he discovered. "Sounds like chicken-fried steaks to me," Rosalind said. "Chicken-fried steaks?" I gasped, unable to comprehend a two-meat dish or why anyone would want to eat it. All that chewing. I couldn't recall ever eating a steak, but was sure I wouldn't have liked it, and fried chicken always need Kool-Aid to wash it down. I shuddered and asked my brother, "What else?" There were some beans in a small white pot. "Yuck!" "What color?" my sister wanted to know. Russell put on his thoughtful face, imitating his hero, the colored engineer on mission. Mission Impossible. I'd say light brown with black round. Black-eyed peas, Rosalind cried, as if she were as good as pizza. What else? A vegetation of dark green variety. I loved the way my brother talked. He checked out almost every science book in our elementary school libraries and always entertained us with new facts and words. Boiled? Rosalind asked. Beyond recognition, Russell replied with a piece of ham inside. Collard greens. I grew nauseous. Chicken fried steaks, black-eyed peas, collard greens? Poor Daddy. Yeah. Rosalind picked at her canned ravioli and blurted, I'd rather have that than this. How could she say that? Ravioli was kid food with its own commercial. When was the last time you saw people on TV singing about chicken fried steak and black-eyed peas? The following evening, we were not our usual selves at the dinner table. There was no talking, no food experiments, no laughter. Instead, we bit the bullet quickly, eating almost everything on our plates. Once excused from the table, we reconvened in Russell's room, and there behind closed doors and out of earshot of our mother, we each produced a yellow school memo from our school pockets or shirt sleeves. And those memos invited parents to bring their home cooking to our school's first ever international food fair. Although we're veterans of Mommy's cooking, we did not want anyone else to sample those hardened pork chops and rice bricks. We'd never lived down our teacher's pity or our classmates' jokes. We agreed that Mommy could not know about the international food fair, let alone contribute a dish. Mommy won't find out about the fair unless someone squeals. Rosalind looked straight at me. If anyone squeals, I'll bet it's you, I said, convinced that my sister, the black-eyed pea lover, was becoming more adult-like every day. It was only a matter of time before she joined our parents' ranks and ate meals with them, leaving Russell and me at the kids' table. Rosalind rolled her eyes, which Miss Essie expressly forbade. Eyeball rolling was right up there with saying bad words and talking back. Ooh, I'm tellin', I sang. I rest my case, she said. Snitch. Red alert, Russell warned, hearing the thump of Miss Essie's bare feet as they headed toward the bedroom. Quickly, Russell slid a school memo under the bed. Russell and I sat on ours, arranging our skirts over our crossed legs. Mommy opened the door without knocking. There's cake on the table. Normally those words created a rush for the door, but neither Rosalind nor I could get up. Russell, seizing his opportunity to choose the biggest slice of Mommy's pineapple pound cake, jumped up and bounded past Mommy for the kitchen. As soon as Mommy retired to her room, Rosalind and I raced after him for dessert. Why couldn't it be a bake sale? Rosalind whined, for Miss Essie's cakes baked higher than Betty Crocker's, and her rolls were softer than cafeteria rolls. Why a food fair? An international food fair? We're not international, I said, trying to be helpful. We're colored, Russell told me, because that's what we called ourselves before 1968, that or Negro. Everyone at school will expect Mommy to bring colored people's food. Maybe Laverne's mother will do it. Laverne is always talking about her mother's barbecue chicken and ribs, how spicy and lip-smacking good they are, Rosalind said, beaming. Russell and I glanced at each other, then at her. You had Laverne's mother's cooking? Russell deduced. I'm telling. You better not, or I'll get you, you little snitch. I mouthed, Oh, Mommy, my sister, who flicked yellow icing at me, hitting me in the chest. I dabbed the icing with my finger and ate it. Russell said Rachel's mother's making corned beef and cabbage. Rachel, Rachel, Russell likes Rachel, I sang. Rachel O'Grady was a white girl in Russell's class with red hair and freckles all over her face. Russell was too dark, but his nostrils flared, making us laugh, and that caused Miss Ellie to holler, All right in there. It was inevitable that one of us would flagrantly break the dinner-time rule and have to face Miss Essie, and as it turned out, it was me. For our school science exhibition, I was paired with Yolanda Watson, the other color girl in my class. We were at her house and had just finished constructing a weather vane to rival all weather vanes when her mother announced it was dinner time. Without thinking, I leaped from my desk and grabbed my supplies. What are you doing? Yolanda asked. I gotta be going, I said, as if Miss Essie was standing right there. Oh, but you must stay for dinner, her mother insisted. Oh, no, I can't. Mommy said we can't eat no one else's cooking. Miss Watson laughed and said, Nonsense, child. I've made more than enough. Go wash up. I'll call your mother. I could not wash my hands till I heard Mrs. Watson talking on the phone with my mother. Mrs. Watson was so hospitable, so insistent that Mommy did the unexpected, and she relented. I washed my hands, certain of one thing. I was going to get a whipping that night. As clear as Miss Essie had always made herself better time rule, I knew I wouldn't be able to sit for a week once I walked through our front door. But I was on the verge of tasting food from the outside, and that made me fearless. If I was going to get a whipping, it'd be worth every snap of Mommy's belt. We washed our hands and sat at the table. What's for dinner? I whispered to Yolanda. When I heard the words fried chicken, my face dropped. Yolanda and her mother exchanged, What's wrong with this colored child glances, and then asked what the matter was. I knew better than to embarrass my mother with rude behavior and said, Nothing, Miss Watson. Yolanda's mother brought out a bowl of cooked cabbage, another bowl of mashed potatoes, the smell of butter wafting in the air, and a platter of golden brown meat piled up in a pyramid. What's that? I asked, pointing to the meat platter. Yet another look was exchanged between the two. Yolanda poked me and said, Fried chicken. I disagreed, anxious to take my first bite. No sooner had I men sealed the blessing than my hand was all in the platter, reaching for a drumstick. I bit into it. The skin, a crunchy cornucopia of spices, set my palate a-dancing. I could not recall ever being so giddy at the dinner table. I tore into the golden brown meat, savoring the juices still remarkably in the tender white flesh. I tried the peppered cabbage, surprising myself by stabbing and eating leaf after leaf. I wondered if the other cooked soggy vegetables I hated all my life could taste as delicious as the cabbage. My mind reeled. Gravy? Yolanda offered as I ate my first bite of the mashed potatoes. No way, I exclaimed, knowing she would not possibly understand the sacrilege of pouring gravy over food as heavenly as this. Besides, I wanted to remember each distinct flavor of Mrs. Watson mashed potatoes. They're creamy but not mushy, bathed in butter, dotted with bits of onion. I ate 4 more pieces of chicken and marched happily home. After Yolanda and her mother moved away and those Kentucky Fried Chicken commercials began to air on TV, I was convinced Mrs. Watson was the real Colonel Sanders and my friend Yolanda was the KFC heiress. That night, having gladly taken a beating for breaking the dinner rule, I earned my sister and brother's respect. I earned their envy as I described every crunchy, spicy, tender bite of what I now knew was fried chicken, and my only regret was that I could not have shared the meal itself with my sister and brother. Finally, my sister's envy turned to outrage. If the squirt can get food from the outside, then all of us can get food from the outside, she said. And how do we do it, Russell asked. By going to the International Food Fair. It's our only chance to eat other people's food. Good food. Just imagine barbecued spare ribs the way they're supposed to taste. Corned beef and cabbage, Russell said. And fried chicken, I added. But how can we get there? Rosalind said, Mommy will take us. Are you crazy? Russell and I exclaimed one after the other. Even though the door were closed, Rosalind felt the need to whisper. Russell, do you still have your school memo? The one about the food fair. He found it underneath his bed. Good, Rosalind said. Now what is the one thing Mommy can make? I shot my hand up. I know. Rolls and cakes. Rolls and cakes. It was not long before we were huddled in a planning formation, humming the Mission Impossible theme. In our best handwriting, Agent X drafted a new school memo announcing a shortage of dishes needed for the International Food Fair. Biscuits, rolls, cakes, and Kool-Aid. At Agent Z's suggestion, Agent X added French and German dishes. Entrees Miss Essie would not attempt. As Agent Y, my part was to leave the school memo on the table along with their homework for our mother's inspection. On the morning of the International Food Fair, Miss Essie told us to keep our school clothes on all day because we were going to the program at the school. My sister, brother, and I were as jubilant as looting thieves. We could barely contain ourselves, anticipating the tables of prepared dishes from all over the world. Our friends were equally eager to sample our mother's cakes and rolls, since we'd spent a good part of the day bragging about Miss Essie's delicious baked goods. We rushed home from school and finished our homework in record time. Instead of our usual kickball game, we played cards out in the patio to preserve our school clothes. And in between hands at the casino, we talked of nothing but the food fair and which tables we'd visit. And then 5 o'clock came. Miss Essie called our name. We came running, and with no time to lose, we washed our hands and lined up in the kitchen to help her with cakes and rolls. Miss Essie was ready for us. In her hands she placed 3 warm aluminum pans, tightly wrapped with foil. Somehow the shape of the tins did not seem right for cakes or rolls. I, who had once earned the nickname Rita Cakes, could not detect vanilla, frosting, coconut, or butter anywhere. I raised the aluminum pan to my nose, took a sniff, and said, Mommy, this don't smell like butter rolls or cake. That's 'cause they're pork chops, Miss Essie said. Now let's go.